Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Tourism Awards webinar number 4, which is all about insights into question 2, which is all about your business plan and the business plan in question for the Tourism Awards this year. Thanks for joining us. As always with our webinars, we encourage you to ask questions as we do go through, so make this as an engaged session as we possibly can. So thank you for joining us this morning, and this morning we're actually joined by our special guest, I suppose, Anna Heaton. Welcome, Anna.
Thanks, Chris, and hi, everyone.
Anna's got a wealth of experience in the Tourism Awards as a writing winning submissions. She's actually also working as one of the project officers this year. So Anna, tell us a bit about your experience and with the awards and how you come to be here this morning.
Sure. Well, thanks for inviting me, Chris. And I've been in the tourism industry for over 20 years now, and my first exposure to the awards was back in 2009 when I was a general manager of Habitat HQ Backpackers in St Kilda. And as a first-time entrant, we did go through the mentor program, which was definitely invaluable in setting that company up to go on to win Hall of Fame in Victoria and gold at a national level. And then later on in my career as a business consultant, a tourism business consultant, I've had the opportunity to take on the role as a writer, and since have written another 4 submissions with 100% gold strike rate, so my clients are pretty happy with that. And 4 of those were first-time entrants. So first-time entrants can win. It is not easy. It does get easier as the years go on, but with the right support, I believe first-time entrants can definitely win. And I think it's a really great thing to do because it really, as a business, lets you step back and see and understand where the benchmarks are in the industry, which are always changing.
So we are fortunate to have Anna here today to provide us with some advice around question 2, because question 2 really is one of those questions around that really helps to set the scene, and it can be the crux of the submission as well. So but before we do dive into question 2, because we've got Anna here and talking about project officer support, it's important to highlight the support that is available to entrants and things. So if you are a first-time entrant, there are the project officers that are in place for the awards process this year with the different regional tourism boards. So if you are a new entrant and want some additional support in completing your submission, make sure you get in contact with your tourism board. Anna is working with Tourism Greater Geelong and the Ballerine, but most of the other destinations have a project officer in place. So I encourage all new entrants to get involved in that process, because it can really help break down the steps to actually submitting your entry. If you are an experienced entrant, you've already done a lot of the hard work to complete a submission. So we actually do have the mentor program that is open to you. So you can see there's Victorian Tourism Awards.com.au/mentor program. So make sure you, if you're an experienced entrant and want someone just to work through the process with you, there is the mentor program there. And mentors are, again, they are volunteers. They donate their time, and what the relationship is between a mentor and a mentee varies for every single business. So I suppose, Anna, can you provide a brief overview of how you as a project officer will support first-time entrants this year?
Sure. Well, I can only speak for my own style, as I guess each project officer will have their own style and how they do things. But one thing we'll have in common is a lot of experience around how to write a winning submission and how to answer the questions. We're there to guide the entrants through the process, provide suggestions on how to answer each question, and feedback throughout the process. We'll also provide a clear timeline and milestones and keep the entrants on track to meet those deadlines.
Which is probably one of the most important things, isn't it? Trying to keep businesses going through the process so it doesn't become a daunting experience at the very end.
Absolutely, and it's not easy when you're trying to run the business day to day as well to have the time to work on the submission. But yeah, don't leave it till the last minute. Also, we'll be giving advice on what supporting images to use throughout, and just be there to answer the phone or answer an email when that gets stuck.
So it's just important that all entrants do have support that's available to them, and the relationship that you have with either a project officer or a mentor is going to be varied depending on your level of experience and what your levels of needs are. But we encourage all businesses to take up these support that's there. Just quickly looking at question 2 before we dive deep into the questions. This is what the online portal looks like. So when you do go through, you'll see down the bottom here, you can move through the different tabs. So touching on or clicking on business plan, you end up here. Again, I will reiterate that the new plan this year is with the business standards and the accommodation standards. So these are the new entry requirements. So again, if you're a bit unaware of what these are and what they entail, make sure you click in and have a bit of a look and actually use these, or start thinking about how you can answer these questions now, as this is a new minimum standard that's been brought on by ATIC. So if you're a bit unsure about what those are and it's the first time you're hearing about it, I'll encourage you to click on webinar 2, which we've pre-recorded, where we sat through with Erin and went through these changes and things this year. So I encourage you to do that, but we've got all that information there for you. So diving now into the questions, or question 2 business plan. So question 2A is obviously looking at your business plan. Provide an overview of the key features of your business plan, including goals, strategies, and outcomes. As I say with all the webinars here, the tip's very important. Make sure you look at this tip and basically do what it says. So in this section, you want to introduce your mission and your vision statement. A 3-column table would be useful here to display this information. Make sure you use measurable goals and outcomes. So Anna, so obviously suggesting to do a table here on this question. So that's obviously the best way to answer this question.
Yes, definitely a table. So this question is all about showcasing your achievements to the judges across a wide spectrum of your business. So I'd start the answer with an opening paragraph, which needs to talk about how you conduct your business planning, who in the company is involved in the planning, how often it's done, is it weekly meetings or monthly meetings, are you being reactive or proactive in your business, and how you monitor and report on success. So you want to try and really succinctly squeeze all of that into one opening paragraph. And a good way to look at it is to sort of decide your goals, is to look at what your biggest achievements were for that year, and the things that you've implemented, and then go back and look at what the goal and actions and strategies were to get those positive achievements. The table, I would lay out, let me come back to that. Have you got an example of how that table was laid out?
I do have an example for you. No, I don't actually. No. That's my next question. So really the way you want to lay out this question is with 3 columns. So you have your strategies or your goals in 1 column. You then move through and have your actions there, but then most importantly, it's your outcomes. And I suppose it's clear to, or it's good to be able to define the difference between an action and a strategy. So be careful in terms of how you would describe each of those. Some people can get tripped up on using an action as a strategy, and vice versa, wouldn't you say, Anna?
Yes, and I had the wrong page in the wrong order there, so thanks for carrying that on. Absolutely, and you'll find that you probably move your actions and strategies around a little bit. Also, make sure your goals are SMART goals, so that they're really specific and everything needs to be quantified. So visitation grew by 10% from 5,000 in one financial year to 5,500 in the next financial year. And
that's really important to put in, but it's also understanding that there is a heap of confidentiality around the submission process. So you can put your numbers in there freely, knowing that the judges sign confidentiality papers. They also sign conflicts of interest. So if you're a tour operator, for example, you can be assured that another tour operator who might be a judge isn't actually reading your submission. So they want to see these numbers. They want to see these quantifiable measures within there to actually back up the statements that you're making. Now, it's also important to include a cross-section of your business. As you'd be aware, with the award submission, it does look at, you know, your customer service, it looks at your marketing, it looks at your sustainability. So it's important to include these. What things would you include, Anna, as part of the business planning operations?
So really have a look right through the business. So have a brainstorm with your team, because everyone has different memories of what's happened in the last year as well. And you can look at the financial goals, which could be you wanted to increase revenue by 10%. So I'll give you an example of a goal, a financial goal. So we want to increase revenue by 10%. A strategy to do that could be creating a social media plan and implementing that perhaps wanted to drive direct bookings and decrease agent commission. So that's a strategy of how to increase your revenue. Then you need to list 4 or 5 actions to implement that strategy, and then very quantifiable outcomes. So for example, the goal was exceeded, we increased revenue by 12% and increased direct bookings from 15% year on year.
And it's also important as well to, if there has been a reason why something haven't succeeded, or you haven't reached your particular target, that's okay to put in as well. It's also important to put some messaging around why you didn't maybe reach your target. Maybe there's some things that occurred within the business that didn't enable you to reach that target, and judges are happy to see that as well. You know, they understand that, you know, business conditions change within a year when you started your business planning. So it's important that if it's not been as successful as you thought it was going to be, that you do put some messaging around why it wasn't as successful.
That's right. And some other goals could be based around customer service. Maybe you've developed a language translation app. Sustainability is another good one. Maybe you've stopped using single-use plastic through the business. You've got sales and marketing goals. Maybe you wanted to grow a particular market by a certain percentage year on year. Maybe you want to improve communication and efficiency in the business by introducing some business apps or Facebook groups. Of course, operations. So maybe you wanted to streamline some processes or improve efficiencies. And of course, staff is another goal area. So maybe you wanted to, or you implemented a professional development plan. So there's lots of different areas to consider, and just pick the best one or the biggest achievement from each area and use that one.
And you know, some of you might be sitting there going, oh, actually I don't have a business plan at this point in time. Oh, do I have an activity plan? Do I have an action plan? Do I have a long-term strategic plan? You know, if you don't have a business plan, this is part of the process of the awards system, I suppose, is to actually encourage businesses to put some of these things down on paper to actually get you started, you know, building these blocks for your business. So if you do have a business plan, you don't need to put everything from your business plan in this question. It really is just really picking out the highlights that you really want to focus on as part of the submission. But as I think we've said throughout this morning, it is, you know, picking up bits of the conversations that you're going to be having throughout the rest of the submission and things. Also worth 6 points, so it is a relatively big component for this question. So make sure you're answering this question or giving it enough credit within your answering. Moving on to question B, describe any innovations that have taken place during the qualifying period to improve your tourism business, and demonstrate how these innovations enhance your tourism experience services. So I suppose the big part of this question here is that it's actually a 2-part question. So, you know, what were the innovations, and how did you enhance your tourism experience? So be mindful, just don't talk about what the innovation was. You really need to talk about the how it enhanced. So you're only ever going to get 3 points if you only do half the question. So make sure you are answering both parts of the question here. And Anna, you've probably seen this being laid out in a couple of different ways, and I do have an example that I can show you for probably an example where you've got lots of little innovations that have occurred across the business. You know, here's an example from the good guys over at Cave Hill Creek, who won gold in their category at both state and national level last year for standard accommodation. So as you can see here, it's clear for the judges to see what the innovation was, and then what the improvement was on their on their experience. And have you seen this done in any other ways?
Yeah, so I think the important thing too is to think about the why. So why was the innovation implemented? What were the issues that were perhaps you're getting some bad feedback or feedback from staff that that sparked the idea to create or implement this innovation. So if you had a really big thing in the business, you could also look at not doing a table, just focusing on that one or two big things, in which case you can do this one with headings based around the why, the what, and the outcome. So for example, a tour company that I wrote for, they had implemented created an app, a language translation app. So the way we sort of wrote about that was looking at the current situation was they had an iPod system with headphones. What were the issues around that? That was that it was extra work for the reservation team and the guides to look at the people that had booked that and take it on the bus. There were lost headphones, etc. That was costing money. So that was sort of the problems. The innovative solution was to look at developing their own language translation app. So how they did that was the development section, and that's that was talked about. And look, the first development didn't go so well, so it actually took an extra year to finally have the positive outcome of launching that app, which then they were able to show through reviews on TripAdvisor that people liked it. So that kind of took a whole page to talk about, which is about what you'd around 600 words or so per question. You can roughly work your answers out to. But as Chris said, if you've got lots of little things, you could break them down into a table like he's shown.
But this is also a question that can really also sometimes trip people up in terms of what innovations have we done this year. I know businesses that have entered in the past sort of go, okay, what have we actually done this year that's innovative? And what's innovative for one business is different for another business. So it's not just asking about what your innovation in your product is it, Anna?
No, so definitely think about the whole business. So human resources, you've got digital marketing, sales, operations, systems, processes, technology, environmental or even social areas. And just remember, it doesn't have to be an Australian first to be innovative. It's something that's innovative to your business. But if it is an Australian first, make sure you do shout about that. And then you need to be careful, as Chris said, to look at the second part of the question, which is getting across those benefits. So the benefits can be to the business or to the customer. And obviously for this question, you want to be showing customer feedback. So if you perhaps use a digital survey in your business, you might be able to show a graph area that people were dissatisfied with before you implemented this innovation, and then after how that had increased the positive responses. But definitely you definitely want to be looking at some testimonials or snippets of TripAdvisor as well.
Yeah, great. But it's also important here to realise as well is that the qualifying period for the Tourism Awards is actually this financial year. So there is still opportunity for you to start implementing something that's innovative for your business. If you look at the questions now and go, well, hang on, we're lacking a little bit in this space. There's something you could potentially innovate or do in the next month that actually will go into this qualifying period and really help to boost up your submission and your answer to this question as well. So that's why we sort of encourage businesses to start this process as soon as possible and break it down into bite-sized pieces, because now while we've got this bit of an open window, while we can still be implementing things in our business that's actually going to benefit the business but also help to answer this question, it's a good opportunity to do that. Moving on to part 3 of this question, it looks at what's your staff training. So what investment has been made in staff training and development, and how has this improved the services provided to your visitor? So again, you know, it could be used in terms of laying this out in a table format. You know, could be 3 columns. You know, what's the activity that you've undertaken, who undertook that training or undertook that activity, and what were the outcomes and benefits. Again, it's important to not just say we've done this training. It's all about showing what the benefits were to the staff, to the business, to the customer. An investment, you know, it can be paid or it can be unpaid training, so you can go to free events. If it is a paid training or you have invested financially into training, you know, it is actually good to indicate, you know, how much money did you spend on training, or what would the equivalent be you would have spent on training by the number of courses that your staff have gone to. You know, and this is going to vary from business to business depending on the size of the organisation. If it's a 2-person operation, you know, they're probably not going to do as much training as a larger establishment and things like that. So when judges are reading it, they are reading it in context of the submission and the size of your business. And this just doesn't need to be structured courses. What other training could businesses put in here?
Yeah, definitely a few that you've mentioned there, but think outside the box. So it could be internal courses, cross-training, that perhaps you've got a cross-training program between your departments, webinars, networking events for meals. So do you send your staff out to go and experience an attraction so they're able to sell it? Do you do some team building activities or staff training days? So there's lots of things that you can consider. Just on a good way to get across the investment, I've found in the past is a table with 5 columns. The first column being the staff position, the second column how many in that department or how many people did it. The third column is the training or the course name. Fourth column would be the facilitator or the company name that ran the training, and the fifth column would be the dollar value of the training, which, as Chris said, if it was 5 staff went off to do an 8-hour, training day, work that out in the terms of how much that cost you in wages to put them on that course. You also want an opening statement for this question. So in there, you might want to include, if you have one, a staff commitment statement or professional development program. Really important to get across your core values again, which should be coming through the whole submission. If they do indeed include a statement about your staff and how important your staff are to your business. You also might want to just summarise why you chose the training courses that you did. And I think in the past I've also had a second table in this question as well, which is more focused on the internal training that you do when you have a new member start as well. So that could just be 2 or 3 columns. The process of the training, the outcome, and that can be broken down by department. So for example, your tour guides, reservations, housekeeping, all staff, and again, just the process and the outcomes. You could also include a third column, measures in there as well. In that you can talk about things like your staff inductions when people first start, any practical tests. Perhaps a housekeeper has to go and make a room, or a tour guide obviously needs to do some driving tests for meals that they might do for product training. And you might also talk about the recruitment processes that you have in your business and how you make sure you get the right people from the beginning. And yeah, it's a good opportunity to show how important your staff are and how much you invest in them. And, you know, show some photos of you and your team out there doing some tree planting or something, you know, some fun things that you've done as a team as well.
So yeah, so just looking at the tip as well, describe your commitment to training. So again, that's just touching on that point of, you know, what's the philosophy around it. But, you know, it's also important to put in there around, you know, how do you ensure that your staff have the correct skills? So, you know, what are the mechanisms that a business can use to determine the training requirements for staff? Anna, what would you like to see there from a project officer's perspective?
So there's, you know, the most obvious thing that jumps out is customer feedback. So that can come in the form of reviews or ratings. If you have some form of online feedback or digital feedback apps that you're using, you can show little pie graphs from those as well. Performance reviews, that's a traditional thing to pop in. Professional development plans. As a business manager, I was always doing self-evaluations as part of reviews. So you're looking, you know, getting the feedback firsthand from the staff members of what they think they need training in. And then you're putting a plan in place through a professional development plan to be supporting them. Talk about it with your staff. You've got practical or written tests. So, you know, a barista might need to make a coffee. If they don't do it well, you need to offer them more training, obviously. And there's also some cool things out there these days, like strengths and values tests that you can do online to share with your teams and give everyone a better understanding of how each other tick and where the gaps might be in your business as well, which can help you when it comes to recruitment. And I guess the second part of the question too is how it's improved the service to your visitors. So that's the outcomes, and this is where you're going to show examples in the form of customer feedback, maybe infographic from your visitor survey. And you can also do a case study on a particular staff member that's maybe undergone some training and pop a testimonial in there from them of how that's improved their performance or how it's impacted on them.
And case studies are great to use throughout the entire submission because it really helps the judge, you know, see the people within the business and how it's actually having a direct impact on the business. But again, we've spoken about a lot here within this question, part C here. So, but be mindful, it is only worth 4 points. So you do need to be succinct. You need to be able to answer this question, you know, quite smoothly and well, but understanding that it is only worth 4 points as well. So keep for relative for the size of your business will determine, you know, how much information you need to put into this. But you know, there's some really good points there from Anna that will really help you go towards answering a great part C. Moving into the final part, and I will make mention here that just a reminder that the questions we are looking at are from major tourist attraction, which are pretty standard across majority of the categories. There are some slight nuances with a number of the categories, so just be mindful that when you are looking at your questions for your categories, if there is a slight difference, don't be too shocked. There is some variances throughout the categories. So unfortunately, we can't go into everyone in detail because there are 31 categories. So just be mindful of that when you are looking at your questions. Some of them, I think it's like food tourism and accessibility, don't actually have a part D to this question. So just be mindful of that when you go through your questions. But looking at part D, describe the main risks for your tourism business and the risk mitigation measure you have implemented. So Anna, what does risk mean here, and do you have any examples of what businesses should be including?
People love this question, don't they, Chris?
Always.
It's one of the favourites, but it's really important to show the judges that you are thinking across all areas. So what is a risk? So it's something that can have a negative impact on your business, obviously. Could be something really little through to something catastrophic. So you can also look at risks as internal and external, internal being things that you can have a lot more control over, putting mitigations in place. external things we don't have as much control over, like the economic climate or natural disasters or a change in government. So when thinking about risks, think about risks to the public, risks to visitors coming to your attraction or your property, risks to staff, damage to property, and an interruption of operations. So the way I sort of would answer this one is an opening 2 or 3 paragraphs. What you really want to get across in these paragraphs is what documents you have in place to manage risks. So things to include could be a risk register, safety audits, emergency management plans, OH&S plans. You also want to be very clear on who is responsible for managing the risks or risk management in your business, how often they meet. Do you have an RH&S rep or a safety committee? How often do they meet? And what are the processes for, review and follow-up? And if, there was something significant perhaps introduced into your business in this area, you want to pop a paragraph on that in as well. And then you need a table. So
I've got an example of what Cave Hill Creek did last year for their submission. So again, not really going into the detail, but just looking at how they have laid it out. And so they've got some environmental risks there. They've also got some risks to their through their activities and different bits and pieces. I know one of their other risks was around the economy and things like that. So a good cross section of what the risks are. Some of you might be sitting there going, again, like the business plan, I don't have a risk management plan. So again, this is another good opportunity as part of this business excellence process to actually, formalise this process. And this can, as part of this, can actually form your risk management strategy. So there are available templates and documents on Business Victoria. So jump online and check those out and things like that to, hopefully start to build up some of this collateral that you do need. But again, be mindful as well that Anna was really talking about the documents that you might have in place, emergency management plans, safety action plans and things like that. Anything that you do mention here, you'll need to show with your site visit when your site judge comes along. So it's great to say you've got it, but if you do say it, make sure you do have it, because judges will be looking for that when they do come out and do their site visit as part of the verification process of the submission. So any comments on the way this was laid out, Anna, in terms of the table and things like that?
No, that looks very good, very extensive. Depends how much you want to get across in that first few paragraphs as to how much room you've got for that table there. So if you did implement something pretty significant, you might want to talk a little bit more about that and then have a reduced sort of table, but definitely 3-column table with the risks, the control measures or mitigations and outcomes is another way to do it, broken down by the area. So environmental, financial, technology, staff, OH&S, operational, business, and then each business is different, so you're going to have different things to focus on that stand out.
So it's a bit of a deep dive, guys, into question 2. That covers off each of the individual sections there in a bit of detail, and there's a lot of really good information there that hopefully you can go away and start putting the bones together for question 2. As I sort of said at the end of question 1 when we did that last week, if you can spend the next week just putting a bit of your thoughts down in relation to your answers around your questions for these for the submission, for this part of the submission, it starts to give you a good draft that you can really work on moving forward. And as Anna said earlier, it's around that time management, set yourself the time to do it now and take the time to do it now, and then you'll find the process a lot more bite-sized as you go through it. Just a couple of other things to mention before we finish up for today. If anyone has any questions as well at this stage of Anna while she's here with us this morning, feel free to put those through now. But next week's webinar, we're going to be diving into our insights into question 3 marketing. So that'll be next Thursday, same time, same back channel. We will, there has been a slight change with the marketing question next week. So we'll be covering off all of that as part of that webinar. As you all would be aware as well, we're running our business excellence workshops out in regional Victoria. So next Monday we're up in Shepparton, and then the week after that we're at the RACV Creswick or Goldfields, and then RACV Hillsville on the 5th of June. These are really great workshops. We're doing a bit more of an overview of the awards, but we're also out there doing these workshops with the guys from the Tourism, Events and Visitor Economy branch of state government, and the team are doing presentations on tech disruption. So if you can get to one of those workshops, they're really valuable to get along to. But I'd like to thank Anna for her time today. Good luck to all the entrants in the new entrants in the Geelong region who we get the opportunity to actually work with Anna and things throughout this year, and completing a great submission. But thank you everyone for your tuning in this morning. All the webinars have been recorded so far, so if you've missed one of the previous ones, jump onto the Tourism Awards website and you'll be able to view those, or jump onto YouTube and look up the VTIC channel. You'll be able to find those webinars there. But good luck with question 2 this week, and we'll be back with question 3 sometime next week. Thanks everyone.
Good luck.